Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Is Citrus the Forgotten Affordable Superfood webinar? It's lovely to have you all here. So the first thing I'd like to do is acknowledgement. So I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'm joining you from Gumbaynggirr land and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. The image that you actually see is from Green Bluff Headland in Mooney Beach, which is really close to where I live. And it's regarded as a very sacred place to the Gumbaynggirr women who went there to give birth. I'd like to introduce myself. So my name is Lucy. I'm your host today, and I'm really excited to welcome you all here. I'm a fellow registered nurse to all you sisters out there today. I'm also a secondary and tertiary educator, and I currently work at Food IQ, which allows me to combine both of those skill sets, which is really exciting and right up my alley. My job today will be guiding you through the webinar and making sure you all have a fantastic time. This event is actually funded by Hort Innovation, as you can see from our background, using the citrus research and development levies and contribution from the Australian government. Hort Innovation is a grower-owned, non-for-profit research and development corporation for Australia horticulture. This hour is going to be really, really awesome because we're delving into the world of citrus, and we're unpacking the latest science about bioactives and food synergy. And you're going to learn so much about how citrus can support your immunity, your cardiovascular system, and your health, and also your brain health. And citrus, I think sometimes when we think of citrus, we think, oh yeah, everyone's got, you know, the odd orange in their fruit bowl. And it's sort of like the grandma or the grandparents of fruit. But we're here today to actually see that there's so much more to citrus than what perhaps we all currently know, is that it provides us with loads of vitamin C. And it's synonymous with that. But today you're going to be learning there's probably a bit more C to citrus than what you think. And we're going to start, you know, rediscovering its therapeutic value. So let's get zesty and let's delve into that delicious fruit and find out all its health benefits. So today we actually have about 65 of you hanging out with us live today, which is really cool. This event is being recorded. So if you have some sisters or friends out there that are watching or would like to watch, but you know, obviously on shift or something, they'll be able to watch it later, and yourself, obviously. Just a few housekeeping stuff. If you've got any questions at all, please pop them into the box whenever you feel like it. Anything crops up into your brain, you go, oh, I'd love to ask more about that. Please just pop it into that Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And lastly, you will be needing your phones later. We've got a little citrus quiz coming up using a platform called Kahoot, which is really interactive and fun. So we'd really like you to take part in that. So keep your phones handy, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, so today we've got two speakers to address the question, is citrus the forgotten affordable superfood? And to help us explore the fascinating world of food synergy and bioactives. First, we've got Emeritus Professor Linda Tapsell, and she'll be taking you through the big picture of food synergy and bioactives and why they're important to the concepts of our healthy diet. And Dr. Emma Beckett is then going to zoom in on why specifically we need to look more into citrus and why it's so accessible to us. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions. So like I said, pop them into the Q&A as you think of them. So first of all, we've got Linda. So we've got Professor Emeritus Linda Tapsell. And Linda is the leading expert in a field of nutrition and dietetics, including how certain foods, such as citrus, can help reduce people's risk of chronic disease, which is obviously very prevalent and prolific in our communities. She's been publicly acknowledged for her outstanding contribution to the sector by receiving the Emeritus Professor Honour from the University of Wollongong just last year. Much of her career has been focused on sharing her knowledge with others, like today. So we're extremely grateful to have her with us today. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Lucy. And
over to you, my lovely.
Thank you. It's great to be working with colleagues on food synergy. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm presenting from Dharawal land, just south of Sydney in the Wollongong area. And I pay my respects to Aboriginal people from that country. I hope you'll enjoy this session, and I look forward to further discussions later on in the program. Now, why am I? Sorry. So this is an outline of the program. I'll begin with talking about what is food synergy, what's the connection with healthy dietary patterns, and then basically where does citrus fruits fit within all of that. And I'm going to begin with a Nutrition 101 slide. This is a simple conceptual map of how food affects health. We can see dietary patterns down the bottom here being delivered by a range of foods. And here we have citrus fruits. Those foods then go on to deliver components, molecular components, protein, fat, carbohydrate, and micronutrients, and bioactive chemicals, which is one of the areas that we're going to talk a bit more about today. Now, those molecules go on to deliver both energy requirements and affect physiological function in one form or another, and that in turn affects human metabolism. And we can look at the outcomes of all of that by measuring certain health outcomes. So when we talk about the effects of food on health, we're working our way through these levels of understanding. There's a hell of a lot of science in all of this, but it is good to map it out in the first instance so that we understand where it is we're talking about, and you know, have we got the right kind of research informing our practice. This is another way of looking at it. Foods, nutrients or food components, and dietary patterns are all interrelated, essentially interrelated, but we need to think food first. When we do research in nutrition, we're doing it at all three levels, but we need to think food first from a health perspective, because food delivers the nutrients. So the nutritional adequacy of our diet is dependent on the foods that we choose, and the dietary patterns are actually characterized by the foods that are contained in them. So food remains the most important variable in this trilogy, even though all three of them are intricately connected. So what is food synergy? Food synergy means that the effect of the food is greater than the sum of the parts. Now, in order to understand that, we need to actually conceptualize as food as being originally plants or animals, and that as plants or animals, they had inherent physiological and biochemical pathways. And within those pathways, we will find molecules, many of whom have origins from nutrients that we've consumed. And it's that relationship, it's those processes that sustain life. So nutrients and bioactive substances are purposeful. They're part of the system that enables that organism to get through its life cycle. They don't exist in isolation in nature. They're part of biological systems that belong to plants and animals. And of course, you know, we often forget that that's essentially what our food system is. So what are the benefits of food synergy? First of all, we are delivering nutrients within a particular dose range within food. And so the bolus of nutrients that we deliver in that particular food form is controlled to a certain extent. It's also occurring in the company of other nutrients, so that it does influence the way in which we can digest and absorb and utilize them. And importantly, this is connected to the notion of homeostasis or balance. These are natural combinations of nutrients that are being delivered to a system that requires constant adjustment and balance. So the concept of food synergy fits in very well with the concept of understanding how our bodies operate. I seem to be having trouble moving this along. So where does that leave citrus? How can we start by looking at citrus? And the first thing we always do, of course, is ask what's in it. And then we can list all the nutrients and bioactives. Naturally, with citrus, we think vitamin C straight away. We may also think carbohydrate, which is in the form of sugar, where we should be getting our sugar from in natural foods, and also of fibre. But there are these other compounds in here now that we're starting to pay much more attention to. And Emma's going to speak about that a bit more later on. But we don't just eat foods, we eat total diets. So there is another synergy that we need to consider in this respect as well, and that is the synergy between healthy dietary patterns and the foods that are contained in those healthy dietary patterns. We all know that in order to meet your nutrient requirements, you need to have combinations of foods that will together deliver the nutritional requirements of the body. We also know that over time, we call this history of use, we have developed dietary patterns that are clearly healthy. And we've had a lot of research happen, for example, in the Mediterranean diet in the last 10 or so years, that has proved that these dietary patterns are more beneficial to health. We've also had a lot of research that has shown that other dietary patterns that are characterized by other food choices are clearly unhealthy and result in poor outcomes. So when we look at that research, the question we ask, just like we ask of the food, what's in the food, we ask of the diets, what's in the diets? And we can identify the foods that are proven to be healthy and not. So why are we focusing on dietary patterns these days? Well, it's because the burden of disease has shifted to chronic disease. And chronic disease, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, is associated with multiple interacting dietary components. So it's not a single nutrient, it's not a single food, it is a combination of these nutrients and the balance that is created within that nutrient intake. So we're moving up a level in a way in our sophistication of understanding of how foods and diets influence chronic disease. Most importantly, when we're doing the translation to practice, people don't eat nutrients, they eat foods. We need to be giving our advice in terms of foods, and we need to assist people in identifying foods that are beneficial for health. There's also a lot of work done on foods that are not beneficial for health, and that's very useful as well. But sometimes we forget there are foods that we also need to be giving the flip side of the coin and giving more detail on the foods that really do support health. So this kind of knowledge is translated into dietary guidelines and other policy related areas. And so dietary patterns are being picked up across the globe in terms of advice in dietary guidelines. And healthy dietary patterns, this is the US Scientific Advisory Summary Report. This is the latest one because our dietary guidelines are still under review. They focus on foods to include and foods to exclude, and hence my point again, we need to be making sure that we're spending good time on foods to include as well as emphasising the foods to exclude. And so I think that the fact that dietary guidelines are focusing on dietary patterns is actually also putting the emphasis back on, well, what are those foods that constitute those dietary patterns? Now, dietary guidelines and other forms of policy that are associated with evidence associated with health benefits of food all come under strict and vigorous evidence review systems. So this is Nutrition 202 slide now, we need to be looking at how the evidence is framed, where we can say that there are benefits from consuming this food in relation to health. And again, it kind of happens on 3 levels. The primary evidence is provided through clinical trials that demonstrate the effects of consuming the food on health. And this is backed up by associations that are observed in population surveys. And then we can explain that those effects that we're seeing by mechanistic research that comes out of laboratories. And when we put those 3 together, it's possible to come up with scientific agreement that these are the foods that we really do need to be consuming. And this is an ongoing process. I need to emphasize that this is an international scientific standard that we review science in a systematic and transparent way, and that we have methodologies for doing that, so that everybody's in agreement at the end of the day that this is what we're seeing is we can have reasonable confidence in. It isn't lightweight, so to speak. So that's going on as we speak in terms of developing the systems for review. So let's have a look at an example of some of the research that is coming out. So, for example, the epidemiological evidence on fruit and vegetables has been quite strong in terms of fruit and vegetable consumption is associated with lower risks of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. And so it's not surprising that fruit and vegetables are front and centre of dietary guidelines across the globe. But where have we moved on from? Science is now showing that the chemical complexity of fruits and vegetables may be associated with health outcomes. So it's a bit like we heard earlier. You've got your orange in your fruit bowl. What are we taking for granted here? Are we taking this class of foods for granted here? And what more can we know about them that will make us see them more clearly and focus on them again? And one area of science has been the study of what we would call the colour compounds in fruits and vegetables, but particularly the carotenoids and flavonoids that Emma's going to talk about a little bit more. And so research is starting to show that these components can be associated with the health outcomes that we're interested in, as we understand those mechanisms that play a little bit more. And so consequently, there's opportunity to perhaps differentiate that food category a little bit more. Some people would argue, for example, that you need to eat a rainbow of fruits and vegetables, rainbow of colours, in order to get the benefits across the range. And of course, at all times, we mustn't forget that those compounds, the carotenoids, the flavonoids, are also existing in combination with other nutrients that enable that plant to get through its life cycle. So there is a purpose to them being there, and therefore eating it within the food is going to be more beneficial. But what this is telling us is that there is value in highlighting specific groups, specific foods within that food group. And of course, there's research happening in that area already. This is a meta-analysis. You can see 86 studies already where they've been able to identify specific outcomes, associations with specific outcomes with specific colours. So these are the colours in plant foods. And as I said, Emma will talk about what's in citrus specifically a little bit later. Now, sometimes we have to do things a little bit faster than that because it takes a long time to do that research and a long time to put together those evidence dossiers. So, a couple of years ago, we had this pandemic and people were scrambling what to do to protect ourselves before we had the vaccines. I noticed a lot of papers coming out, review papers coming out in health on what we can do, particularly in food and nutrition. And this was a rapid review published in Current Nutrition Reports, where they said these foods are going to be critical because we need to be supporting our immunity. And you'll notice citrus is up there. So in science, we work slow, we work fast, but we still tend to come up with the a fairly common ground in terms of our understanding of what constitutes healthy food. So where are we at in terms of consumption? As we move along the translational pathway, one of the first things we would do then is to look at, well, are people eating it? And we know that mandarins and oranges are amongst the top selling fruit and veggies in Australia, and we've probably all got them in our fruit bowls, and they do make great snacks. But the question is, how broad is that? And how is that reaching across the population? If you look at where we're getting our vitamin C from, if that's what we're thinking, you have to eat citrus for vitamin C. Australians are actually getting citrus from a range of other foods, including juices. And yet this is despite the fact that if you eat one serving, 150 grams of an orange or a mandarin, you meet 100% of your requirement. That's on one key nutrient. That's pretty amazing. We did find one other paper that was from Margaret Allman Farinelli's group, where looking at the National Nutrition Survey, and they specifically singled out citrus fruits amongst other foods. But the intake was quite low. It's only about 10% of young adults had reported eating a citrus fruit on that day. And that kind of aligns with the general problem that we know we've got, that our fruit and vegetable intake is still suboptimal despite the amazing supply that we have in this country. So there's plenty of room for improvement in terms of consumption. So in summary, let me say that food synergy is a concept that has now gained quite good coverage within the scientific community, and it recognises that the impact of the food is greater than the sum of its parts. It shows a certain humility within the scientific community that we don't know everything, and a respect for food as being of having a biological origin, that where the nutritional composition has a biological purpose and has enabled that food to get through its life cycle. So what do we get from that? From citrus? Citrus fruits provide a unique combination of nutrients and bioactives, and I think the research that is ongoing in this area will continue to expose that for us. In relation to where does it fit within the dietary pattern, we need to remember that the quality of the diet is totally dependent on the food choices that are made within that diet. So from the point of view of citrus fruits, they're well implicated in healthy diets high in fruits and vegetables. And certainly when it comes to the nutrient ledger at the bottom line, if you've got citrus fruits in there, you probably have covered your vitamin C very well. But then there's all these other things that they will be contributing as well. In terms of new science, new cutting edge in nutrition research generally, but specifically in relation to fruit and veg, and now, as we'll see later, in terms of citrus fruits, the chemical complexity of fruits and vegetables may differentiate the health impacts. So if we begin to understand the chemical composition more, we will be able to argue more as to why it is important not just to take these foods for granted, but to make sure that you consciously include them in your diet. And further research will enable that to happen. And then if we look at the broader Australian diet, the population health issues, we know that consumption of fruit and vegetables is still not optimal within Australia. And so if even just with one food, with citrus fruit, if we can value the contribution of that food more, we can be pushing the message more and, translating that dietary guideline much more effectively in the future. So thank you very much. I hope I've kept to time on that.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you ever so much. I have to say, there was just so many things to take home today. I just wanted to highlight a couple, but it was just so fabulous and so detailed. I think what I learned was foods are, you know, a whole sort of beautiful, perfectly packaged matrix. It's not just like one nutrient that you're getting from a particular food, and that whole matrix can help with all sorts of things, you know, in your body, you know, especially when you talked about diabetes, especially for a nurse. That's, you know, that's something that we have to look after every time somebody comes in, nearly.
Yes.
But you said so many things, and I think the other thing that you said was food is a whole thing, is greater than the sum of its little parts, and I love that. I think that's definitely the takeaway for today. So thank you ever so much, Linda, and you'll be back later to answer lots of questions.
Yes.
All right. Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, everybody. So when we first started, we had about 60 odd people. Now we're nearly up to 100. So we're moving on to our quiz. It's a Kahoot. So this is when you need to grab those phones if you have one. And we're going to there's only going to be 8 questions. It's a multiple choice quiz. And we'll give you those options to pick which you think is the best answer. All right. I haven't had anyone join for a little bit. Here we go. Super Citrus Challenge. Which of these nutritional components found in citrus fruits are important for immune system function? Just check the clock on the side, 19 seconds to go. We've had 51 answers. Fibre, vitamin C, bioactives, or all of the above? Woohoo! It's all of the above. Oh, it's the leaderboard or the scoreboard. So Miss Cat. All right, second question. Which of the following citrus fruits is highest in fibre content? Oranges, limes, grapefruits, mandarins. Five seconds to go. If you don't know, have a bit of a punt. Oh, grapefruit, oranges. We had a few, didn't we, for grapefruit and oranges? Who's sitting at the top? We've still got Cat at the top, 1,939. Question 3. Citrus fruits are one of the highest dietary sources of flavonoid bioactives, which can help protect against heart disease, dementia, depression, or all of the above. All right, 4 seconds to go. Ta-da! 46, well done. All of the above. What a cracker. Oh, Cat's still sitting in the lead. Well done, Cat. All right, next question. What is the relationship between the consumption of citrus juices and blood pressure? Does it increase it, decrease it, no effect at all, or lack of evidence exists? Red, blue, yellow, or green? Just 10 seconds to go. Decreases blood pressure. Woohoo! 36 of you out of 50. 51, I think there are of you. And Cat is still sitting at the top, 3,868. Next question. How might the flavonoids in citrus fruits support brain health? Prebiotic effects on the gut microbe, increases of blood flow to the brain, antioxidant activity in the brain, or all of the above? So a brain health question. So how does it support it? All of the above. And our scoreboard, ooh, still sitting up there. All right, next question. Which mineral found in citrus fruits plays an established role in maintaining healthy blood pressure levels? Is it iron, potassium, magnesium, or zinc? Potassium, essential in your heart health. Oh, we've got a new leader, Tessa, 5,724. Okay, next question. In clinical studies, what is the minimum time that it takes for citrus fruits to improve cognitive function? Minimum time. 2 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours, or 2 weeks? So to improve cognitive function, how long would it take? What have the clinical trials found out? And last second. Lovely. It takes 2 hours. That's all. And the leaderboard. Tessa, 6,678. All right, and the next question. What percentage of daily intake of vitamin C is obtained in half a grapefruit? Looks like this is the last question, so get those thumbs moving. 78%, 108%, 158%, or 279%? Only 10 seconds to pick this one. In just half a grapefruit. Woo, 158%. Beautiful. All right, after that last question, who's sitting at the top? Oh, Frankie at 6,782. Tezas, oh, missed out. You might see that in a bit. Well done, everybody. I hope you enjoyed Kahoot. We're going to move swiftly on to our second speaker today. Well, hello there, Dr. Emma Beckett. Lovely to have you here. I'm just going to introduce everybody to you. So Dr. Emma Beckett, our vivacious food science expert who loves to myth-bust information around food and nutrition. She loves to share her expertise with others both in the classroom and the wider community. And she amalgamates all the sciences to help provide people with the best evidence about food so they can make more informed choices. And we're really lucky to have her today. So over to you, Dr. Emma Beckett.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I do see, Lucy, that you are in your lemon dress today, and I too am in my citrus outfit. I think between us, we have all of the citrus represented. My lime earrings do keep disappearing into my Zoom background. It thinks it's a green screen, but that's okay. So I would like to acknowledge I'm on the lands of the Awabakal people before I start, and I acknowledge all the elders and past and present, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Sorry, I got thrown by that Kahoot music. The tension came back in me again. So today what I want to do is encourage you, whoever you are and wherever you are in the healthcare ecosystem, whether you're a dietitian, nutritionist, nurse, naturopath, doctor, movement, fitness professional, whatever. I want you to be part of recommending fruit as part of healthful patterns of eating, as Linda's just spoken about. And I want you specifically to be part of recommending fruits like citrus that are often overlooked and underestimated. So what I want you to do in your minds and in the minds of your clients is I want you to be part of making citrus a superfood. Now, I do not love the term superfood, and I spent a lot of time early on in my career trying to get rid of the term superfood and debunk it, because it's not a scientific term, it's not an evidence-based term, it's a marketing construct. And a superfood is just a normal food, but it's got a great marketing campaign and a sexy backstory. But I've realized that trying to blow up the concept of superfoods is never going to work, just like we're never going to get rid of beautiful people giving bad advice on the internet. So instead, I want to lean into that hype, and I want to be able to show people that the common fruits and vegetables that we eat are just as powerful, but they're overshadowed by marketing. And citrus is a really key example of this. So most of the fruits that get the superfood tag are super expensive, but citrus is really affordable. And this is really important in the current cost of living crisis, where more than ever, healthy eating feels expensive. And it doesn't matter if healthy eating is expensive, if it feels expensive, that's going to deter people from doing it. Citrus fruits are also really familiar, and they're accessible and easy. So we can get them at the supermarket. We can get them all year round at the supermarket. We don't need any particular skills or knowledge to be able to prepare them. So anyone can access the benefits of citrus as a superfood. We don't need anything very special. And they are nutrient dense and bioactive rich, which is the credentials that superfoods are often leveraging, that they've got lots of bang for buck in terms of nutrition and lots of extra things that aren't essential but are good for health, i.e. our bioactive compounds. But what you need with superfoods is a sexy backstory, and citrus do have this too. So citrus are part of traditional medicines in cultures throughout Asia, and they were a status symbol. Consuming citrus in ancient Rome was considered a marker of high status. So there's your sexy backstory. But even better than that, for all of us who work in evidence-based scientific professions, the sexiest origin story for a food curing disease ever is citrus and scurvy, giving sailors citrus fruits so that they wouldn't get scurvy on their long voyages. We know now that that's because of the vitamin C, but when we did those experiments, we didn't really know specifically it was the vitamin C. We just knew that the citrus did it. I say we, I mean science. I was definitely not part of those original experiments. But what happens when we have this story of vitamin C and citrus curing scurvy is it becomes citrus is just vitamin C. And then we start going, oh, well, citrus is abundant in all kinds of fruits and vegetables, so why would we just recommend citrus? And then citrus ends up being overlooked. And I'm hoping by the end of this presentation, you won't be overlooking it anymore. So the other thing about superfoods is they have sticky stories. And sticky stories are stories that people remember and retell and they share with other people. And people don't retell and reshare information like fruit and vegetables are good for you generally, but they latch onto specific stories that they can share. And so today I want to give you some specific stories about citrus, as well as some general information about why they're good for you. So that you can give people reasons to eat them. So when we surveyed healthcare professionals, most healthcare professionals did know that citrus was good for you, but the main factor that they could identify was vitamin C. And that's really the number one thing that we learn about citrus in the profession. And I want you to know that that is the old paradigm. Citrus for vitamin C prevents deficiency. I want you to look at this new paradigm, as Linda so beautifully laid out for us, that citrus are a unique food matrix with lots of things in there that have lots of benefits, systematic benefits for health, and we'll go through some of those specifics so that you can tell these sticky stories to people. So I loved what Linda said about being greater than the sum of their parts. So you can see vitamin C is there as one of the cogs, but it's also connected to the folate, the citrus polyphenols, the potassium, the fiber. And these are just 5 examples. There's actually so many more things in the fruit. I just don't have time to tell you about all of them. But the point is, each of these things interacts to be bigger than some of the parts, to create a machine of work. And it means that when we have the whole fruit, we get a bigger function than if we have one of these cogs alone. And that's why we don't get the same benefits from taking supplements as we do from eating these foods. And that's why we don't need to be concerned about the sugar in fruit in the same way that we need to be concerned about the sugar in our discretionary foods. So really, we want to think about citrus and all of these parts individually beneficial, but also working together for the greater good. So let's get into some of the specific benefits. So here are my top 3 citrus health benefits. We've got our immunity, our brain health, and our heart health. And some of this is down to the vitamin C, but some of it is a lot bigger of a story. So for immunity, a lot of the data is based on vitamin C. So the data that we all know about reducing severity and duration of colds and other respiratory diseases like pneumonia, that is based on the vitamin C content, and that is the story that we hear most often. But we also have lots of large prospective cohort studies. And remember, a prospective cohort study, even though it's observational, is our highest level of evidence in the evidence hierarchy for disease etiology. And these studies show that citrus fruits support both brain and heart health. And this can be things like 2 or more serves per day linked to a reduction in depression at a 10-year follow-up, as we just learned about in Kahoot. 3 to 4 serves a week, having a similar level of reduction in dementia risk at a 6-year follow-up, or citrus consumption being linked to enhanced cognitive function at the 30-year follow-up. Citrus fruits have also been linked to a reduction in risk for cardiovascular disease and ischemic stroke with up to 25% reduction. And when you look at those studies where they look at reducing disease risk across our fruit and vegetable groups, for that reduction for stroke risk, that was the highest for any fruit and vegetable that we saw specifically for citrus. So that's actually quite powerful, and a reason why we should be recommending people are eating more citrus fruits. And grapefruit specifically has been linked to reducing cardiovascular disease mortality. So these specific benefits from citrus do come from the nutrients. So the nutrients are part of this story. So again, though, not just vitamin C. So both vitamin C and folate are important to supporting immunity. This is because they have roles in producing new cells, so making our immune cells to go off and do all those immune jobs as they expand, but also our cellular replacement for our barrier function. So keeping things where they're meant to be and keeping things that aren't meant to be in out. In terms of brain health, the vitamin C is likely to play a role there as a neuroprotective antioxidant. But we also know that diets that are high in potassium and high in natural food folate play a role in reducing cognitive decline, and both of those are in citrus. It could be linked to the heart health effects. So the heart health effects having knock-on effects to the brain, because we know that diets high in potassium can help counteract the effects of sodium and help reduce blood pressure, as well as folate is going to reduce our risks for hyperhomocystinemia. So high homocysteine in the blood is going to cause damage to our blood vessels and increase risk of cardiovascular disease. And when that happens in the brain, it's going to increase our risk of brain diseases, neurodegenerative diseases. So all of these things are in citrus as part of its complete package in terms of its protective effects. In terms of the citrus bioactives, so bioactives, as Linda has already told you, are our non-essential but health-promoting components in our foods, and particularly in our plant foods. And so citrus are a major source of several bioactives, including the carotenoids, flavonoids, terpenes, and limonoids. And our citrus fruit are the major source of flavonoids in the Australian diet. And many of the flavonoids that are in citrus are unique to citrus. And so things like hesperidin, hesperitin, naringin, quercitrin, rutin, they are mostly found in citrus in the high amounts. Now, what I do want to say is I don't expect any of you in your practicing, clinical, seeing patients, advising patients sense to remember that list, and I don't expect patients to care about it. I'm a biomedical scientist. I love those details. The detail we want people to take away is there's lots of bioactives in our plant foods. Each type of plant food has its own unique profile, and citrus specifically has its own unique beneficial profile. That's the take-home message I want you to go away with. And we know these bioactives that are in citrus fruits have antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties, which is good for the immune function and balance. Because remember, immune function is not just about tackling the problem, it's about protecting the host tissue as well. And the benefits to the brain and the heart can come through these pathways as well, but there's also evidence that these citrus bioactives are involved in increasing the expression of neuroprotective proteins in the brain. So a specific job, not just a knock-on effect from all the other benefits you get. The antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, also good for heart health. And we also see some of these bioactives have a specific lipid lowering properties. And so that's going to be good for supporting the heart and the artery. And so, you know, knowing that citrus and the bioactives in citrus can do all those good things is a reason why we can be sharing this information with people. Now, fiber, not so sexy as a superfood story, but fiber has lots of benefits. And when we look at citrus, it has a really unique balance of benefits in terms of the soluble and insoluble fiber ratio. So most of our fruits and vegetables have more insoluble fibers than they have soluble fibers. And so that means we've got less of the fermentation happening and more of the roughage. But in our citrus fruits, we actually have almost a perfect 50-50 balance of our soluble and fermentable versus our insoluble fibers. So that has benefits through the production of microbial metabolites, as well as the soluble fibers that can help lower cholesterol. The acids themselves can also have a benefit to the brain. So there's a really cool study that shows that when you give people citrus spiked gum or citric acid spiked gum, they do better in a maths test. So very short-term benefits to cognition, as well as neurotransmitters being released in animal studies when we stimulate the taste receptors with the sour compounds. As well as a very recent study from one of my PhD students that showed a genetic mutation that reduces our sour taste leads to people having lower MMSE scores, which are scores of cognition, so having more cognitive decline. Now, I want to do a really quick thought experiment with you. So I want you to think about a lemon. I want you to look at that lemon on the page, and I want you to think about cutting into that lemon and the smell of that lemon being released, and bring that lemon close to your face. And now in your mind's eye, I want you to lick that lemon, put that lemon in your mouth. And now I want you to think and stop about what's happened to your body while you've been doing that. You should have felt a little bit of a puckering in your cheeks, which actually physiologically stimulates smiling. And you've probably felt the saliva start to swell up in your mouth, producing saliva just thinking about that sourness. If you're wearing an Apple Watch, you might have seen that your heart rate spiked. So just thinking about the sourness of citrus has all those physiological effects. All of those are actually health inducing, getting you ready for digestion, getting that heart beating, helping you feel happier and like smiling. So while I present my favorite ways to eat citrus, I would love for you guys to get in the chat and share your most unique citrus recipe. So how do you guys like to share, eat, cook citrus? Because when we think about citrus, we think about eating the whole citrus as a snack, or putting it in water, or having it as juice. But there's actually so many great ways that we can be eating citrus. We can be putting it into salads and making all of the bitter vegetables in salads taste better. We can be cooking whole citrus into meals, into cakes, into soups, all kinds of ways of eating it, adding it to salad dressing. So jump on the resources button at the bottom, and you can see there we've got our little Savoring Citrus cookbook with lots of great ways that you can be eating citrus as well. The other great thing about citrus is it is available all year round. So sometimes we tell people we want you to eat seasonally, because you eat seasonally, then you get a lot of variety. Citrus, we can get variety throughout the year. So lots of opportunities for people to be accessing citrus. So I just want to leave you with what Linda said about dietary patterns, and that we can fit citrus into all of these great dietary patterns, the dietary approaches to stopping hypertension, the Mediterranean diet, plant-based, vegetarian, minimally processed. The whole food is edible and nutritious, which means we can use it to reduce waste and to support people into making good, healthy, beneficial nutritional decisions. So please do join with me and my mission in making superfoods, making citrus a superfood.
Woohoo! Emma, that was fantastic. I'm easily excited, and you've definitely made me excited about citrus. So I'm sure lots of people listening are too. Again, there was lots of take-home messages, and I think that for me, it was that citrus and its the group of citruses are just completely unique in all the cool stuff that's inside that's going to benefit our bodies, exponentially. Like lowering cholesterol, it just and just the taste of it. It can actually spice up stuff, take all the sweetness out. It was very, very cool. But I definitely have to tell my secondary students about the citrus acid spiked gum will improve their maths test. So when I finished here, I'll zoom out and tell everyone that.
It can't hurt.
No. So yeah, thanks so much again, Emma. Yeah, so much to learn, so much. So it's a good thing we recorded it. So we're just going to go on to the Q&A now, which is our next part of the webinar. We've just got 2 questions coming up, so I'll let you two fight it out amongst yourselves which one would like to answer which. So the first question was actually asked before we even came live, which is really cool. So I'll read that question out, and then we'll work out who would like to answer it. So the question is, how do finger limes, the native finger limes, compare with the introduced citrus species?
I'll take that one, Linda, if you don't mind. So our finger limes are highly nutritious as well, and very similar nutrition profile in terms of vitamin C and potassium and all those kinds of things that we've talked about today. They're just not as accessible, and they're just not as affordable because of farming and marketing practices. So if you can get onto finger limes, for sure, give them a go. But do remember that when we're buying Indigenous food products, to buy them from Indigenous food sellers. So we don't want to be part of not just colonizing the land with introduced species, but then also taking from the Indigenous food products without actually paying that tax back. So equally as nutritious, but make sure you're buying them ethically.
Yeah, cool, thank you. And we have another question. So maybe, Linda, you'd like to tackle this one. Is there actual evidence that supports having lemon juice in the morning on an empty stomach that is actually going to help our gut health? We've heard that one. Oh, you're just on mute, Linda.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Today. No, not that I know of. Look, I did quite a bit of research on citrus preparing for this, and I didn't find anything in that area. Not that I was specifically searching for that question, but I would be surprised if that were the case. I haven't seen anything in relation to gut health and having to have that emerging in the literature or the recommendations that have been through the sieve of evidence-based practice. So that's my answer, I guess. Not that I know of, and I doubt that it's likely to be the case given the pH of the stomach as well.
Yeah, we did have a few questions about pH. Yeah, sorry.
Can Emma. I just add, Lucy, this goes to what I said about how specific stories are sticky and people share them. And so people love to share lemon juice, hot in the morning, on an empty stomach. And that sticks as advice more than just eat citrus foods, they're good for you. And we're actually making dietary advice a lot more complicated for people through letting those kinds of sticky stories perpetuate. So, people don't need to be stressing about the when and the how. They just need to be eating the good, nutritious foods.
Yes. And the whole foods as the diet rather than just the nutrients. Okay. Someone was listening. That's actually all we've got time for today, ladies. But thank you ever so much for answering all the questions. We have had a few more come through, but we're going to have to close up the session there. But I just want to say how incredible it was. You talked about citrus in 2 different ways, but it was just so, it highlighted all the benefits. So I loved the fact it's accessible, it's available all year round. We learned that it's a whole food. It's not just, it's made up of lots of nutrients and bioactives, and eating it with other foods, they have this synergy, and also just the colors make it so cool to eat. So we should encourage that. and obviously all the amazing physiological benefits, you know, for CVD, diabetes, you know, brain health, all those things as well, which is really pertinent for everybody that's listening and joining us today. So really, really cool. I also like to thank, obviously, you lovely ladies, all the participants for coming on today at lunchtime hour, and obviously for Hort Innovation for funding this and supporting us with all our research in citrus foods. So thanks again, everybody. That was really, really cool.
Thank you.
Thumbs up. I'm just going to leave you on this screen here. So we've got the resources on the Citrus Hub, which can take you through to some really cool fact sheets, evidence-based summaries of what we've spoken about. So that's on the resource. Please feel free to explore. All right, thank you very much.